Sounds like we have a freight train that's going to be doing a runaround. It's what I call the Richmond turn. We get it about once a week. There's only two industries on this line that the freight train serves, and we seem to get it maybe once a week. Anyways, I've got Peter's end pieces and gussets lined up here. End pieces and gussets for module number 1, 1A, 1B, number 2, 2C, 2D, number 3, 3E and 3F, number 4, 4G and 4H. We're going to fasten side pieces to each pair of gussets, and one of those side pieces is going to have a hole in it for a telephone jack. We're going to alternate those side pieces with the telephone jacks. We're going to alternate it. It's going to be on the left side of module number 1, right side for module number 2, left side for module number 3, and right side for module number 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on the gussets, I'm going to mark telco, and that's going to tell me that that's where the side piece for the telephone jack is going to go. That train's taking the level crossing. So there's module. We'll wait till he goes through. There's module number 1. Module number 2, the side piece for the telephone jack is going to be on the right side here, so we're going to mark the gusset telco, and that's for 2D, and the same thing for 2C. Module number 3, the telephone jack is going to be on the left side, so we mark that telco. Same with the one underneath, telco. And module number 4, the telephone jack is going to be on the right hand side, so we mark that telco and telco. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer that lettering telco to the bottom side. Telco and telco, because when we assemble the end pieces and the side pieces, we're going to be looking at the bottom. And same thing with this. Turn it over. Telco and telco. Oops. And telco and telco. That's module number 2. Module number 3. Telco and telco. So I now have the gussets labeled as to where side pieces with the holes for the telephone jacks are going to go. Now let's start assembling the side pieces to the end pieces and gusset assemblies. So we're now ready to assemble the bits and pieces together into the module frame. We marked the pieces, the gussets and the end pieces in terms of what was going to go where. We had 1A, 1B for module number 1, so we have here the gusset end piece assembly for module number 1. 1A is here, 1B is at the other end. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to load the side piece with screws. But first of all, we're going to make sure that we have the proper side piece. We just finished marking the gussets as to whether there was going to be a telco jack at this end or just a plain side piece at the other end. In this case, we're looking at telco, so I'm going to need a side piece that has a hole in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load both ends of the side piece with screws. And I'm going to screw those screws in so that they're just coming through, and then I'm going to back them off a quarter of a turn so that I can't feel the tip of the screw. I want those screws to be ready, that when I've got my side piece lined up with the end piece or with the gusset, I want to be ready to drive that screw into the wood. I don't want to be fumbling around trying to figure out where that screw is. You're going to see that in the next number of steps that this is where our numbering and lettering really pays off. If we screw up with this part of the assembly process, we have very little chance of recovering from our mistake. So before we glue and screw the side pieces into the gusset end piece assemblies, we want to make sure that we've got the proper orientation of our pieces. This is why we mark things top, bottom, in, out, and telco. Now, you could use your cordless screwdriver to drive the screws in. Something I don't recommend, because you need that little extra bit of time, that extra bit of patience to make sure that you've got things done properly. Okay, so let's check. We're taking a look at the bottom on the end piece, bottom on the gusset, bottom on the side piece. So we next take our glue and we spread a nice thick bead along the edge of the gusset and along the edge of the end piece. We spread it out with our finger all over the edge. Got a dish of water here to wash off the glue, and we're going to place our gusset on top of our measuring blocks. Then I'm going to move the gusset in and out until I'm really flush with the edge. I'm focusing on that middle screw. I want to get it nice and flush with the edge on that middle screw first. And then I drive that screw in. That is going to be my fulcrum. That glue is squeezing out nicely. There, I'm nice and flush. Then I'm going to take a look at my bottom screw and I'm going to rocker the gusset in or out. However, I've discovered that when I've rockered that bottom screw in the middle, my end piece is now no longer flush. So I'm going to take that screw out And I'm going to take my top screw and I'm going to rocker my gusset down so that I am flush for my top screw. And I screw that screw in. So that one's good. My middle screw area is now flush, and I can now screw that screw back in. So that's the whole process when we're fastening the end piece to the side piece, or rather the side piece to the end piece. Screw in the middle screw, make sure that we're flush. Screw in the bottom screw, make sure that we're flush. Rocker it in and out. The middle screw acts as a fulcrum, and we can rocker it in or out, then we're flush there. If we're not flush, then in the middle, undo that screw and then make the top screw flush, and screw that in, screw in, and then finally screw the middle screw back in. Okay, so we now have the side piece attached to the end piece. We now need to fasten the side piece to the gusset. So what we do here is we've got our measuring block in underneath, and I push down on the end so that the gusset is now resting flat on top of the measuring block. Remember, our measuring block is 1.5 inches, same thickness as our styrofoam. That one's in nicely, and we now screw in the middle screw. That's pulling the side piece nicely in up against the gusset. And the glue is starting to squeeze out. This is what we want. And finally, the end piece. Now, it's not going to be the screws that are going to hold all of these bits and pieces together. It's going to be the wood. Because once that glue dries, things are not going to move. There we go. Our side piece is now glued and screwed together. I'm going to wipe off any excess glue. We're going to take our slotted screwdriver and get rid of any beads that might be there. We don't want any beads of glue. So that end of the module number 1 is now done. We're now going to work on the gusset end piece marked module 1B at the other end of the side piece. And so we've now moved our operation to the other end of our side piece. We've got our screws in, ready to be screwed into the gusset and the end piece. We take our gusset and end piece assembly, slather on the glue on both the edges for the gusset and the end piece. Take our finger and spread it out. It's always best to apply more glue than not enough glue. Too many people try to save on the glue. I like to slather it on. take a measuring block and I'm just slipping it in underneath here just to hold it in place. I got some glue on my fingers here. And again, I am lining up the edge of the side piece to the edge of the end piece, focusing on that middle screw. So I've got it all nicely lined up, and I drive in the screw. Take your time doing that lining up, because it will pay dividends in the long run. That screw is being nicely pulling in the side piece to the end piece. That's a good fit. And my bottom edge of my end piece is nice and flush with the edge of my side piece, and I drive that screw in. There we go. Now the top screw. That edge is nice and flush. Make sure that before the glue dries that you're looking at bottom on the end piece, bottom on the gusset, bottom on the side piece, bottom at the other end, telco at this end, and telco at the other end. Once that glue dries, there is no second chance. Now we're going to do the side pieces to the gusset, and again I've got my measuring block underneath and press down. I start with the screw that's closest to the end piece, and I work my way towards the middle. Now that's pulling it in nicely. Now the middle piece, the middle screw. It's always a good idea to have your side pieces loaded with screws before you start spreading glue. Just pulling it in. Again, you might be tempted to use your cordless drill with a screw bit on it, but I don't recommend that. Just take your time, no rush. And that third screw is pulling everything in nicely. There we go. That end piece gusset assembly is now nicely secured to the side piece, and the glue is nicely oozed out. Wipe it all off. We take our slotted screwdriver, wipe out that bead. Wipe out any excess glue that got pulled away from there. And there we are. The two gusset end piece assemblies have been fastened to one of the side pieces. So we're now ready to work on the other side. We're going to set up our workbench to look after that. So we're ready to fasten the other side piece onto the gusset and end piece assembly. Our first step is to spread some glue onto the gusset and the end of the end piece, and we do something a little different here. We are going to flip our assembly end for end, and we're also going to be applying glue to the gusset assembly piece at the other end, because once we fasten the side piece at one end, we are not going to have the opportunity to apply glue to the gusset end piece assembly at the other end. So we've now got glue spread on both ends. So we've got the glue applied on our gusset end piece assemblies at both ends. We have pre-loaded the side pieces with screws. We bring the side piece in and move the gusset in and out so that we are flush. We're focusing on the middle screw here. Got that flush. Drive in the middle screw. Nicely done. Rocker it in or out. Drive in the bottom screw. I don't like the way that middle screw area isn't as flush as what it can be, so I undo that middle screw, take it out, and rocker the gusset in or out. That's better. And screw in that top screw. Take your time lining up the gusset and end pieces. There's no rush. It just so happens that this is the second one where that middle screw didn't line up nicely, so we have to pull it out and then screw it back in. And there we go. We've got a nice alignment here. Make sure before you start that you are looking at bottom, 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 bottom. I've had a couple of situations where I didn't look at bottom, bottom, bottom. And one hell of a mess to try and fix that mistake. Saber saws. Angle grinders with a flap disc. It would have been better if I'd started all over again. So make sure you number, label, letter, everything. You produce better results that way. Let's see how we're pulling in here. There we go. This end is done. Now we're not going to wipe off the glue right away because we're going to go to the other end. Okay, now we're working at the other end. Do the same thing. Line up the edge of the gusset with the edge of the side piece. We focus on that middle screw. We drive that in. And that's pulling it in nicely. And the bottom screw, we can rocker the gusset in or out. We're using pine, so pine screws in nicely to the wood. The only thing you have to watch out for is that you don't torque it all the way through. And once again, I don't like the way that middle part has lined up. So we're going to take out the screw. Just take it out a bit, and then rocker the gusset up so that we're flush at the top. And when we do that, that fixes our flushness at the middle screw. And that's pulling in nicely. We got the glue is oozing out. Nice and flush all the way, top to bottom. And we can screw in that middle screw. Now the wood is chipping by the screw holes, but we're going to put in some wood filler, and that will cover up those holes. By the time we're finished, you won't even know that they're there. Side screws. We've got the measuring block underneath, pushing down on the gusset and screwing in the screws. Once we get the screws in, we are going to clean up the wood glue, and the next step will be to install the middle cross member in the middle. It's taken us a little bit of time to install the bits and pieces, but it's best to take your time. You want a nice result. There, module frame assembled. Okay, so our next step is to take our middle cross member and install it in the middle. We're going to take two of our measuring blocks, put them on each side underneath the part that we marked off before. We're going to take our glue and apply it to both ends. Smear it around. Do the same on the other end. We have preloaded the screws on both sides, 2 screws on each side. I kind of clean that glue off my hands. I make sure that I'm looking at the bottom, and I fit into place on one side. I pull the other side out and make sure that I've got it located where it should be, and press down on that measuring block, and I screw in the screw. That middle cross member is going to make sure that my side pieces aren't bowed in or aren't bowed out, that they're just at the right width. I want 22.5 inches from the inside of one side piece to the inside of another side piece. Let's go over the other side and do the screws. So I make sure that I'm nicely lined up. Press down on the middle cross member. I want that 1.5 inches for my styrofoam. And once again, sounding like a record here, make sure that we're looking at bottom on the middle cross member, bottom on one side piece, bottom on the other side piece, bottom on the end piece, and bottom all around. There. Middle cross member is installed. Okay, let's see how good we are. Let's take our carpenter square, fit it into one corner, nice and square. Fit it into the other corner, nice and square. Let's go to the other end. And we fit it into this corner. Oh, perfect. And into the other corner. Very good. So, all of the preparatory work that we did has paid off. We have got module number 1 for Peter's group of modules fully assembled. And we've got 9 more to go. We won't bore you with all of that assembly. We'll show you what the final product is going to look like. Ever onwards and upwards.